So a double play, generally, it could be 6-4-3, it could be whatever. Batter hits into a double play. So there's two arguments, the base 1 and base 2. These are the two bases where the putouts are made. By default, it goes from second to first. So, the guy gets thrown out at second, then the guy gets thrown out at first. It could go the other way. The guy could get thrown out at first and tagged out at second. So the double play, it doesn't really make too much difference to the underlying state or the statistics, but it's interesting to capture this the right way, and eventually there could be more information here. Like I said, if it's a 6-4-3, if it's a pop fly, tag them out, force them out, many different ways to have a double play. Similarly for a triple play, in the case of a triple play, it doesn't matter how it's done, because at the beginning of a triple play, we're guaranteed to have no outs. At the end of the triple play, we're going to have 3 outs. So it really doesn't matter how it happens. If you call a triple play with less than 2 runners on base, that raises an exception because it can't happen. If there's not 0 outs, then that also can't happen. You can't have a triple play if there's already an out. Then, of course, the batter gets an at-bat. The batter gets a ground into a triple play, even though it's not necessarily a grounder. It is a stat that's captured. We move to the next batter, and the side is retired, another internal method. Moving on, the fielder's choice is the case where a batter hits a ball and the runner is put out, but the batter is then able to get to base. So in a case where a runner's on first is the classic case of a fielder's choice, and that's the default case. That's where the runner gets put out at second, but the batter is safe at first. So it's like a failed double play. This is simply the code that handles that. It doesn't count as a hit. It does count as an at-bat against the batter. So if you got up every time and you hit a fielder's choice every time, your batting average would be 0. Then we move on to the next batter. This is the case where an error occurs. By default, nothing happens other than to take note of the error. But sometimes runners will advance or the batter will get on. So if batter on base is true, then that will determine whether the batter will have gotten on to first base. And so if the batter were to get multiple bases, the batter on base can be set to 1 for second, 2 for third, and in some really weird case, you could get an error home run, or I guess people are just throwing the ball off each other's foreheads until the guy scores. Advances is a list of tuples that shows what all the runners on base did. If nobody's on base, then it's just none. If there were men on base, then they advance, and there's a method in bases called advances that takes that tuple and it says these are the runners and that's where they advance to. So the sacrifice is another method that can happen, another event. And a batter can perform a sacrifice bunt, or they can perform a fly out where the runner advances, possibly scoring. So you can't have a sacrifice where no one advances, otherwise you've sacrificed for no positive gain. So if there's nobody on base, that raises an exception because you can't sacrifice for no one. And if there's 2 outs, you've made the 3rd out, so that's also a bad sacrifice exception. If there's no advances, then everyone advances. That's the default. And then if a score happens, the run scored, there's an RBI attributed, there's no at-bat. Or there is always an at-bat. There should be an at-bat here. We may have a bug. So you get a sacrifice, you get an out for the pitcher and the team's pitching stats. The inning gets an out, and we move on to the next batter. The endgame method is called when the game is actually over. And in the case where the home team has a higher score, then the winner is set to home. We increment their wins and we increment the away losses, and vice versa. Otherwise, it's a tie, and there's no winner, and we increment both teams' ties. Apparently, there can be ties even in the major leagues, so that is here, and it's a possibility. In all cases, we set the game over to be true, and then we save the teams, which means we take the current game stats and we write them into the season stats. Basically, just add them to the season stats for both teams and all the players. So the base number is just a utility function. It returns the base number, which is an index to a list of bases. If it's first, 0, second, it's 1, third is 2. Otherwise, return base. Pretty simple. A new inning is another internal method. Starts over a fresh inning, clear the bases, reset the count, reset the outs, swap the bat team and the pitch team, and set up the references correctly. Another internal method is the side retired. This is 3 outs, so time to switch sides. We basically switch the sides, increment the inning, and then call the new inning method that I just showed you. Strikeout, another internal method, mostly just deals with stats, making the next batter up to bat, giving a put out. Put out just increases the outs for the pitcher, increases the outs for the pitching stats for the team, and then if there's more than 2 outs, it's side retired, otherwise it's just another out in the inning. The next batter means just bring the next batter to the plate, reset the count. If we score a run, we have one argument, that's the scorer. One problem here is that all runs count as earned for the pitcher and the pitching team. In some cases, if the batter got on with an error or the inning should have been over due to an earlier error, those runs shouldn't count as earned, and they should just be runs against the pitcher instead of earned runs. Currently, that's a small bug in the statistics. This is the walk method. It basically moves the batter to the first base. If anybody's forced ahead, they also move. If first base is open, obviously that's it. We move on to the next batter. Plate appearances are another statistic. It just adds to the batting stats for the batter and the team batting stats. Hit by pitch is another statistic. It's both for the batter and the pitcher. Steal is another statistic. There may be a problem with the steal method. It probably should be pointing at the runner and not the batter. So I think that there's a bug and that the batters are getting credit for steal. So something I'll fix as soon as I can figure out what the problem is, if there is a problem. Similarly, for caught stealing, this is also wrong, I believe. An at-bat just means the player got to bat and got out or got a hit. That's another statistic for the batter and for the pitcher. It helps to calculate the batting average for a batter or for the pitcher's batting average against them. Pickoffs are another statistic, and an out, a walk, RBI, home run, double, triple, hit, ground into a double play, ground into a triple play. Most of these are fairly straightforward statistics. Sacrifice, strikeout, or a run. In the case of a run, the scorer is the person who gets the credit for a run and not the batter. So that there is correct. I think I need a similar change to the steal method. That is basically the entirety of the game class. You can see it's 600 lines of code. It's monstrous. There's an equally monstrous unit test file for this that has clearly missed a few cases. but we'll go over some more code in the next video. Peace.